Hi, welcome to the Global Digital Identity track of the Blockchaingers Hackathon preparatory event that is hosted by the Ministry of Interior and Kingdom Relations at The Hague. For this purpose, we are discussing identity, and more specifically, we do that with the CTO, Chief Technology Officer of Luxoft, based in Zug. His name is Vasiliy Suvorov.
Correct, thank you.
Welcome. You are some kind of an implementer of blockchain technology, aren't you?
Right, so blockchain technology does play an important role in many projects that we do, because people now engage in digital transformation programs where they think, okay, how can we use new and emerging technologies to create new business models, to save our revenue, create new revenue, create connected products, and so on and so forth. And of course, decentralization and distributed ledgers and blockchain technology is a very important part of supporting those digital transformation programs.
And these are programs you provide for?
Well, Luxoft itself works across several different verticals. Financial services, primarily in capital markets space. We work with automotive companies, building software that goes inside cars. We work with hospitality industry, travel industry. We work in healthcare and pharma, and a few other industries as well. So
if you were to find a common denominator throughout all those industries in terms of their interest in blockchain applications, what would it be?
Well, I would say that it might sound funny because these are early days, and people just get curious. I think curiosity is currently the major denominator. If you look, they hear about blockchain, they see the competition is trying to use blockchain to disrupt them out of the business, and they get curious, and they want to understand how can they use it for their advantage.
Yeah, curious also in order not to become disrupted?
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah. I mean, I think if you look at digital transformation, that's the main reason why people do that, right? They see that they get in competition from new technology companies, sometimes from unexpected sources, like Facebook and Google, Amazon and so on and so forth. They also see that, the challenger companies coming and trying to get into the space using technology. And in many cases, these companies have advantage because they have technical talent that's actually difficult to find these days. They are already ahead of the competition because they don't have legacy technology they have to maintain and support so they can move faster, right? So
they have less transaction costs?
Well, they have less transactions costs, they have less cost of running and supporting existing business, right? So they can move faster. They just don't have this weight on their feet, so to speak, right? That prevents them from moving faster. And so these companies, they recognize that and say, well, who can we partner with to move forward, right? So yeah, that's the major motivation.
That's the curiosity part of their motivation?
Right, absolutely, because most of them, they come from business backgrounds. They really understand the legislative part of things, they understand the processes, they understand what people expect, but they're not so rich on technology. They probably don't have talent and understanding. What is this blockchain? Is it real? What kind of blockchains exist? Does it always have to have cryptocurrency? What about smart contracts? Are those real contracts?
Okay, so the technology side of things is complex.
It is.
Maybe even complicated for some of those industries.
Especially blockchain, because there's so much hype.
Hype.
Right, hype, yeah. I mean, people talk how blockchain can disrupt everything and solve every possible problem on Earth, right? But that's just hype. In reality, no single technology can solve every problem out there, right?
Yeah. So, in this curiosity of these industries, you mentioned that the technology seems promising, despite it being not so clear for anyone. But what about the more social side to it? So, the consensus-driven mechanisms that underlie blockchain as a technology?
Yeah, so...
do they care about that as well?
It depends on the industry, really.
For example?
It might not be the, how would I say, the major motivator for them, but actually the censorship-resistant aspect is, but not in the sense that people use it generally, right? Because when you think about business ecosystems, the dominating business model that exists today is that you need to create a unicorn, a company that dominates the market, that becomes a monopoly, right? You know, if you want to sell your apps on Apple devices, you have to go through Apple, right? Mm-hmm. If you want to advertise on Google search, you have to sell your ad through Google, right? And if you want to advertise to people who use Facebook, you have to go through Facebook.
And to reach as many
to reach as many potential people. So in a way, you end up creating these monopolies that own the whole market, right? So they become the gatekeepers, right? They become the people that create censorship, if you will, right? Because it's Google and Apple and Facebook who decide, right?
The trusted third parties nowadays.
Yeah, they are to a certain degree, but they are essentially the gatekeepers that decide who is allowed to use their platform to do business or not. Now, with decentralization technologies, you can create open markets and create open ecosystems and actually take on these big monopolies, right? These big unicorns, because now you have people who can connect to you and create a bigger ecosystem, right? On ad hoc basis using decentralization technology. And this aspect of censorship resistance in terms of being able to do business with whomever you want and compete with big guys, I think is very, very interesting aspect for a lot of companies.
Mm-hmm. Is there a specific project that comes to mind?
Well, let me quickly think. So sure. I mean, if you look at mobility, and if you think about all the big automotive manufacturers, right? Some of the big brand names, Mercedes, Audi, BMW, and so on and so forth. If you look at
some non-German names,
and some non-German names as well, yeah. So if you think about them, they are really reluctant to partner with the likes of Google and Apple. And the reason for that is because they understand the moment they open up the data, they open up the cockpit and allow Google and Apple and others take the space within the cockpit, they basically lose control, right? Because this is what they control. They control the user experience. They don't want to lose that, right? Because they want to have Mercedes experience, they want to have Audi experience, and so on. And they are looking at blockchain, they are looking at all these new technologies to really see, well, how can they reinvent their business model and monetize the data in a privacy-respecting way, right? Not losing the trust of their users, right? And the things that they think about, getting into mobility business, providing fleets for people on demand and subscription basis, adding value-added services and car being able to pay for different things, on-demand insurance and other things like that. It's all about creating ecosystems and connecting with other businesses, bypassing intermediaries essentially. So
looking beyond the specific stakeholder interests.
Right, exactly. To bypass intermediaries, to create the user experience exactly that you want to create, right? And win the trust and win the business for your car or for your brand, right? So I think it's interesting how even big companies like that are afraid of even bigger companies and therefore try to look into decentralization and creating the new ecosystems themselves as well.
So in the distributed ledger system that blockchain is, trust is also dispersed, right?
Correct, yes.
What does that imply for such a car manufacturer?
Well, I mean, when I say that, I wouldn't say that all of them sort of 100% on and 100% really behind it and want to do it, but I see that they start to engage and start to think that way. And I think the more they see that, the more they discover that aspect of, well, if I'm a player in a bigger market and I can tap into other people's offers, but then design my experience in partnership with them, this is where they benefit from this distributed trust, right? Because if I engage with BMW and I can have my Spotify account there, or other type of music service, or other type of mobility, hospitality,
not Mercedes.
Right, absolutely, and have them as an open proposition where I can potentially onboard new types of services that I like within that experience. I think that's very powerful potentially.
And in your own business, you focus on these industries in order to help them discover the meaning of blockchain for their operations.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah, because what happens is that most of the time people come to us and says, well, we have this idea and we want to do a blockchain project. And the first thing that we do, we like to challenge that. We really like to challenge them and ask them, do you really want to make it a blockchain project? Do you understand how blockchain works and all the pluses and minuses of it, right? Because as you move from centralized system to decentralized systems, there's cost associated with that. Because any decentralized system, a distributed system, actually requires more resources, is not as fast, and creates its own limitations for your business models. So we need to discover them. Do they understand that? Are they really prepared to benefit from decentralization or not?
Yeah. So right. Provide them with a disclaimer.
Right. Well, I mean, not so much a disclaimer as an exercise to sort of educate them about implications of going down that specific route and also choices available to them, right? It's and what's interesting for us, I mean, we now need to wear hats of consultants rather than just implementers and really be the sparring partner for these customers to help them understand and navigate the landscape.
Yeah, outlining opportunities and risks.
Absolutely, yeah.
All along the way.
Absolutely, yeah.
And now that identity comes up as one of the most challenging issues in applying blockchain technology, do you hear those customers also mentioning that as a potential jeopardy for them?
Well, they starting to understand that because generally corporate entities, they're concerned about different regulations, and of course everybody knows about GDPR and personally identifiable information, and they understand that's an issue, and that's how they start to get into the whole identity topic, right? Second of all, when we talk about distributed ledger technology, obviously, managing keys is very important, and your key is your identity, because like with especially Bitcoin, for example, or Ethereum.
That's the only non-anonymous thing.
Right.
There is about your account.
Yeah, and if somebody has hold of your private key, they basically do whatever they want on the system, right? So that's true for any type of cryptographically dependent system, and this is how they start to understand, oh, I need to manage people's identities, I need to manage the keys, I need to manage the data, the attributes about person or a thing or a company, and this is how this whole discussion really starts to go forward.
That demands something else than is regular at these companies from them.
Yeah, absolutely. Because one of the reasons why people want to digitize their processes, they want to reduce friction to engage with people, right? So you want to open a bank account, you want to have digital experience, meaning that you use apps, you don't come to an office, you don't necessarily come up with a pile of paper that people can verify your identity, onboard you. But that, and if they do some sort of new technology that can potentially reduce friction, but don't rethink the processes, you just, okay, you have something nice and shiny in the background, but your initial experience is not as good, right? Because you still ask people to produce documents, come in person and so on and so forth, right? So that really makes
their customer journey becomes a bumpy road.
A bumpy road, absolutely. So it does make them sort of, when they think about that and they think about end-to-end process, how do they engage with customers, which technology to use, how do they need to reinvent their back-end processes so it also accommodates this new frictionless world, right? That sort of opens up the horizon for them, including identity question, how to manage it.
What do you tell such a company in such a case, typically, in a catchphrase?
Well, I think the really stupid one that sometimes comes up says, don't put lipstick on a pig, It kind of gets people's attention.
And who's the pig in the example?
Just old process, you might have manual processes, you might have email, phone calls, or a mainframe system somewhere in the back end where your shiny object, your lipstick, is basically a mobile application that looks great, but it doesn't work because as soon as you need to process what you start with a mobile application, it hits the wall by running into old processes that are clunky and not work well, right?
Yeah, so the pig, the current systems that work in these companies do not necessarily look more beautiful or brighter due to the lipstick of blockchain technology.
Right, absolutely, absolutely. And in fact, it's worse because they advertise, oh, we have this great new technology, we have this new way to engage you, but your experience is actually not going to be better. It might be better at the first step, maybe second step, but the third and fourth step are actually going to be terrible, and therefore you're actually going to be disappointed, and it's going to be worse, right?
Yeah. And now that we are here with hackers and policymakers in a room, we are trying to think up actual challenges which blockchain applications should tackle. So it's really a demand-driven way of working in that sense. In Groningen, early April, there'll be a Blockchaingers Hackathon in which the actual blockchain applications will be thought up. What would you hope that would come out of such an event?
Well, I'm really hoping that we will see some maybe simple applications, but something that solve real problems, right? If we can come up with easier way where people can identify themselves for loyalty programs, for example, and travel more seamlessly, that would be perfect, right? But it doesn't have to be a big end-to-end system, right? Solve one simple problem, right? Solve the login problem, solve the identification problem to get a ticket or get into the gate and so on and so forth. So what I would really look for is not, let's not boil the ocean, let's have a big vision, but let's solve a simple problem first, and let's make that perfect, and let's connect the things together to build decentralized ecosystems. Those are the things I would be looking for, essentially.
Focus on what the pig really needs rather than lipstick.
Right, exactly.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Vasiliy.
Thank you for having me.